Okay, so the next one is the reality of marriage. So the first pillar was the purposes of marriage, so understanding those. The second is the reality of marriage. And again, this is the other kind of classic text in the Scriptures. Can somebody volunteer to, let's have a female voice, if we don't mind, read this one aloud. Ephesians 5:22-33.
I'll read it.
Nebu's going to read it.
Oh, how did you know that?
It wasn't me.
You can take it up with him later.
Yeah.
It's a great nickname.
Wives, submit to your own husbands as to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself its Savior. Now as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Husbands, love your wives, as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle, or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it, just as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery is profound, and I'm saying that it refers to Christ and the church. However, let each one of you love his wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband.
Okay. Powerful passage on so many fronts. For marriage, even just the elevated thought of Christ and his church that this talks about. It's just really, really great passage. So the way I have thought about this for years is in this sort of formula-looking type thing, that this passage speaks of a reality of marriage. And I like to tell young couples in a premarital counseling, what is, when I look at verse 23, and I just say, kind of a trick question, what is the most important word in verse 23? And well, they usually respond with what? Christ. It's like any kind of Bible class, you say Jesus, you probably get close to the right answer, right? Right. No, I think the most important word in 23 is the word is, because it denotes a reality. Christ is the head. It doesn't matter if you make him the head or not. He is the head. And the parallel there is husband is the head of the home. And I talked about this earlier. That should give you, husbands, a great deal of moxie, backbone. It also should give you a great deal of humility. And isn't this the nature of the Christian walk? You must walk in the power of the resurrection. There is nothing that can conquer you. Death and the devil are defeated. You should walk through life with a godly strut. But the meek inherit the earth. You need to have utter humility. You've got to walk knowing your frailty and weakness. We have this treasure in jars of clay, so that the surpassing power may be about God and not us. You ever thought about that passage? Why is the gospel, 2 Corinthians 4:6, God said that light shine out of darkness has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. This magnificent passage. We have this treasure, the face of Jesus Christ, in an earthen vessel. Because the earthen vessel is cracked and frail. That's good, because if you break, then Jesus will bust out of it. If there's a crack, it'll show. And so when I very crassly talk to college students, I say, let them see your crack. I know, I'm sorry if that's crass. You can delete that off the recording. But seriously, let them see your cracks. Husbands, your headship is not one of macho, this twisted view of masculinity. It is one of brokenness, but it is one of power. And that is the Bible's teaching about leadership, My favorite book over the last few years is a book called Leading with a Limp. And it's written by a counselor named Dan Allender. And the whole idea of the book was that God was going to fulfill his promise through Jacob. And he wrestled with him and bruised his hip. And to this day, the scriptures say the Israelites don't eat the joint of the hip because Jacob limped. The promise was true. It would come through limping leaders. Moses wrote in Numbers 12:5 about himself that he was the most meek man on the planet. What kind of arrogant narcissist writes that he's the most meek man unless you get meekness? Maybe he's not a narcissist. And we know that Moses was meek because he had endured incredible affliction by God. He had been banned to the desert, and he had to suffer. He had to walk back to this nation that he was banned from to liberate. So the whole book is about this idea that biblical leadership, male headship in the home, is not one of tyrannical rule. It is one of humble submission and service. It is one of powerful leadership as you give yourself over. He says, as is himself its Savior, and he gives himself to his bride. That's the idea. That's the reality of headship. So men, you have a high calling, but you're not left to yourself. You have a head over you, and that's the Lord Jesus Christ. So lead with a limp there. And I'll just say this. I use this illustration all the time too. The proverbial table of my Witherington heritage has an empty chair. My father, he left. He abdicated his role in my life. But you know the most powerful chair at our table still in the Witherington household? His empty one. Why is that? Because of this reality. Whether he's good or bad, he is the head of my family. He is. And he has taken it in directions that nobody would want. I wish he would repent of that. I wish he'd be restored to that. But so that's weighty for you as husbands to know. Whether you're good or bad, you are the head. You are leading your family in a direction. Even if you say, I'm out of here, I'm gone, I'm leaving, I'm tired of this, I want to go play golf in Las Vegas the rest of my life. You're still the head of your home. Okay? All right. The responsibilities, therefore, that are part of this reality, he says to the husbands, is sacrificial love, and to the wife, willful submission. Again, this is a curse word, right? In most of our culture, wives submit. Kind of get all the jeers and laughs and, what are we, Leave It to Beaver stuff? What are we, in the 1940s? Just get all that trash out. This is not what this passage is talking about. Some antiquated, abusive view of women are down here, they got to get in line, men are up here, we run the rule. That ship has long sailed, okay? We need to have a good discussion about this. And here's the way I want to say this to you. The pastor that came and led our conference last week, he talked about the male ego. Every one of the males have it. And then he had this PowerPoint slide. He said he had male ego, and then he had right after the big male ego. You don't just have an ego; you have a big ego, and that's not necessarily bad. Men just have this innate thing, like I want to matter. I want to know that I can conquer the game. I want to know that I can conquer the animal. I want to know that I can defeat the enemy. I want to, your boy. This is why boys do this, and that's why they. I remember this one time with my son. I was watching him. I had 3 daughters first, and then I had my son. I wanted to see how he'd adjust to an over-estrogenized home, and I saw him one day playing in his room with a baby stroller and a purse. Oh man, I was like, oh no, and I'm okay. Don't overreact here. So I watched him for a few minutes, and he pulled his pistol out of the purse. It was shaking the baby, And I was like, we're good. Yeah, we're gonna be all right. But the point was, in what's inside us, even just genetics and chemical. Is a hard wiring as a man to conquer something. It doesn't have to be muscles and hunting. It can be something very academic or something very artsy. Don't get hung up on the world's idea of this, but it's in a man to do this, to be something. So wives, the word that you need to think about, what your husband wants more than anything is to know you think he is a lion. That when he roars, the jungle shakes. That Aslan is on the move. However he's wired. He may be a boisterous, conquer the world, general soldier type guy, or he may be an artsy, creative, thoughtful, contemplative, but he still wants to be a lion. He still wants to have that ego stoked. Don't hear me saying stoke his ego, be flattering. You understand what I'm saying? There's something inside of him that wants to rise up. Okay? And we'll get to how he, but no, men, your wife. There's something about women, I mean, the fact that we have baby dolls and castles and princesses, and we talk about all this. A woman wants to know that she's the queen of the world, that she is doted on like royalty, that she has all access to beauty and food and relationships and protection, and the kingdoms of the world are hers because she's a queen, and she walks in a room and everybody goes, wow, look at her. That's what she wants more than anything. Even if she's tough and driven and strong, she still wants to know, I'm beautiful, I'm protected, I'm guarded. So husbands want to be known they're a lion. A woman wants to know that she's the queen. Now, look at this with the responsibilities. What does the husband do? His responsibility. He lays down his life for her. Women, there's not one of you in here that would not gladly submit yourself to a lion who is laying down his life for you. That his whole job is to make you look incredible. Look at the passage here. Jesus sanctifies her, having washed her with the washing of the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing. Husbands, your job is to make her so radiant that when she walks in the room, people go, my goodness, look at her. Not because she's doted in makeup and has all these talents and skills, but she radiates something beautiful and powerful. That's your number one job. Make her be that way. Dote on her, love her, protect her. Again, the pastor that came last week, he said, what if you walked into a room at a party, right? We know how this all works. You walk in at a party, the guys are over there and they're talking about something, manly, and the women are over there talking about something womanly. What if, you walk in and the measuring line begins. We're going to see how this exchange goes. You walk in with your wife, and most of them just, okay, we'll see you later. What if you said, whoa, come here, babe, and you kissed her on the forehead. Stop, you're embarrassing me. Come here. And you gave her a big hug. What is all her group of friends going to do when she walks up? What kind of man did you marry? And then what's that guy going to do when he walks up to his guys? Yeah, that's kind of like, that's the way it ought to be. That you have led her in such a way that people go, man, she is loved dearly. Look at her. She walks in, she's radiant. Look at her. She has made him feel like that he could conquer the world. I think that's what Paul's saying here, is that kind of relationship. And in that language, submission, loving, leading, not a problem, right? When we talk about this, it's just not. The problem is we don't live like that, and so therefore submission and loving sacrifice. We're selfish. Husbands don't love sacrificially. They're selfish. And then wives respond to that, and they ain't following that bozo. He can go off his own cliff. I ain't going off that cliff, that kind of thing. That's not how the Bible speaks of that. Let me just say a couple words here. Some of you, just staying on the men's side here, some of you are naturally strong. I think your sacrificial love is to learn to empower the people. Some of you are just naturally strong leaders. This is me. I have to tame that down in my home. Not stop it, but I have to learn to empower. I can dominate at my house. This is my sacrificial love. This is me dying to myself. When I would have an opinion about everything from paint color to what we're having for dinner, I choose not to. Right? I have to do that. Partly because I'm arrogant, and probably just because I'm opinionated. You know, I just kind of just flows out as I have an opinion. I don't need to have an opinion about everything. But on the other side, some of you are naturally passive. That's okay too. Some of you are naturally not that way. You've got to learn to step up. You've got to learn to initiate. You've got to learn to assert yourself into situations. And in both of these, I would just say, and for the women too, as I get to that, we've got to have help here. I've got men around me. One of my pastor gave me one of his prayers for me for the year was that I would grow in gentleness. I want that to be something that characterizes me. I'm thankful to have men around me that know my proclivity to be harsh and driven and focused and, in your face. I also need to bear gentleness. That's me being sacrificial. Same thing with if you're naturally passive. That you have men that are encouraging you to step up, make that call, make that decision, lead out there, take a risk, that kind of thing. Same with the women. Some of you are naturally strong leaders. You should learn to empower. Perhaps he doesn't need to hear your opinions all the time. Perhaps you ought to tame it down a little bit and find a way to use your strong leadership to empower him. On the same side, some of you women are naturally passive. You've got to learn to speak up. You've got to learn to find your voice. You may be in the home of a strong leader. That still means you've got to still step in and speak up. That's part of your willful submission there. So we'll have some questions around that. And the result of this is oneness. Oneness. This is such an interesting concept. Is two people with very different backgrounds and upbringings are, biblically speaking, supposed to be one. Supposed to walk as one person, be in agreement. It's hard, isn't it? It's hard to have oneness in marriage all the time. We're so different. I see the world through different lenses than Danielle does. But the goal here, and I just wrote, oneness here, humility. Humility characterizes our relationship with each other. I give deference to her. She gives deference to me. Just because we have roles and distinctions in our marriage doesn't mean that as we'll see when we talk about the gospel here in our last session, that love and submission, though here the wives are called to submit. If I had done the scriptures justice to this passage, I would have put verse 21 before I did verse 22. What does verse 21 say? Does anybody know? Yeah, submit to one another. And I know enough of the Bible and I know enough things. I should have done that. I should have but this is the marriage passage, right? But the point is that when Paul was writing this letter to the Ephesians, submission was what everybody in the church is to do to each other, submitting to one another. That doesn't negate the uniqueness of how that works out in the marriage relationships. There's a unique role that the wife plays as a submissive wife, but at no time I'm not supposed to submit to my wife. I am still part of that church command, right? Because then he gets into the children, right? Children, and it's like, oh, my children need to submit to me. Well, there's times you need to submit to your children. Because he said submit to one another. The whole passage starts that way. Anyway, this isn't a parenting class, but you understand that. Let me say this, oneness. There's one of my mentors, just kind of I gave you his sermon series, this guy named Tim Keller. And one of the things he says is that our greatest desire in life is to be known and loved. To be fully known and fully loved. But the problem is we don't operate like that. Because if you really knew me, I wonder if you would really love me. So I withhold things from you. And if you say, I love you, I doubt that because you don't really know me. Like, we do this dance, right? If I were to say to you, I love you, you'd be like, but you don't know me. Or if I went ahead and just let you know me, I'd be really afraid you might not love me. But he says, what's great about God is he knows you fully and he loves you fully. So he knows, even if you're hiding from your spouse, even if you're hiding from your pastors or if you're hiding from your children, you're not hiding from God. It's that whole garden scenario. He came, he will find you. It was a joke that they were covering themselves with leaves, right? You're going to hide from the Almighty. But he still loves you. He knows exactly what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling. And he loves you. And I think, though we're going to fall woefully short of this in marriage, I think that's what oneness is supposed to do, is create a space where you can be known. This is why he says they were naked and not ashamed when they were one flesh. Okay? That I should be able to move out, though with trepidation, because I know it's risky, and let you know me in marriage. Let you know all my thoughts, my flaws. And trust that you'll love me. And I'm not going to offer you a superficial love without asking you to know me or asking to know you. I think this is why Peter said to the husbands in 1 Peter, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way. Because he knows that what my natural proclivity is, as a man is to fix my husbands, fix your wives. It's not what he said. Husbands, understand them. And it takes a whole lot of grace and humility for me to first move towards understanding than problem solving, than remedy, solutions, that kind of thing. I think that's what oneness means, is that we move in this dance together towards being fully known and fully loved. Okay, so that's the reality of marriage. Let's look at the questions, and I'll give a little bit more content as we look at the questions, because Rick asked a great question. I think, Rick, is that right? Rick, a great question on the last, about the sanctifying question I asked on the last one. And that one really was, how has your wife helped you overcome maybe a besetting sin or weakness that you have? Because that's part of the goal. So I told him, one of my besetting sins is just a quick fuse, a proclivity to be angry. Danielle has really helped me with that, to learn to control my emotions, to learn to be a little more patient, to be a little more thoughtful in my words and even body language. So sanctification working its way. That was a great question. So let me give you these questions and talk through them. So the first one, wives, how has your husband loved you sacrificially? This is your chance, wives, to let the lion roar. Hey, babe, this is how you've really loved me and our family sacrificially. And then you can get to the one you want to get to. In what ways would you like to see him love you more? So stroke his ego for a minute, and then help him develop, okay? Second, husbands, in what ways have you seen your wife submit willfully to you? This is not your chance for you to say, I love all the ways you get in line. This is a chance for you to say to her, babe, this is how you're radiant to me. This is how you are wonderful. This is how you're a queen. And then in what ways would you like to see her follow you better? What ways does that not manifest itself so greatly at times? Number 3, where does your marriage have the most oneness? Where in your marriage? And this could be an area. This could be a season of time throughout the year. I don't know if you're there are times in my year that I'm a better husband than I am other times of the year. For some reason I'm really great around Christmas. I'm a great husband around Christmas. We have a lot of oneness and a lot of love. That kind of thing. February, winter, when I'm in the middle of a tense work season, I'm not so great, and there's stuff going on there. So it could be a seasonal thing. It could be a locale thing. We tend to not have a whole lot of oneness when we go to my family's place, because I get on edge, she gets on it, but where do you have oneness? And then the second one, what areas of your marriage do you need to grow in becoming one the most? So that could be, again, a season of life, a time of the day. It could be an area of finances. It could be a locale. Hey, when we go to your mom's house, you put on the fangs, or you retreat into whatever. That would, and basically what we're talking about with oneness there is where is the temptation for the wedge to come in? That if it stays there, you know how a wedge, Billy and I love to chop wood next to each other, and we have these I do it manually. He has this big, hydraulic thing he does. Anyway, I use it too.
As he's getting older, he's borrowing.
I use it. But the principle behind a wedge and chopping wood is you get it started and it'll split the log, right? So I've got a splitter that will do that. But that's exactly how your marriage gets split too. Is a wedge gets in there and it just splits it right down the grains. Okay, so oneness is trying to quickly alert yourself. Hey, there's a wedge here, and if we let it set in, it's going to split the log. You got to identify those wedges. You got to help each other. I think there's a wedge here, and when it starts to dig in, I can feel us getting torn apart. That's when oneness is there. So, talking about oneness there. All right. Questions or comments about those questions? I'll let you have some time, and then those who need to leave can leave. Okay. All right. Good. So.